Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and those of you who've been following this channel for a little while knew that I love doing live streams for you guys, but then pretty abruptly stopped it after like 7 consecutive streams in a row. Now, that wasn't because I didn't like you guys anymore, that was actually because my hardware started making trouble, and basically I ran into the infamous stability issues of the i9-14900K, where after a little while in usage it started to become unstable, and that is exactly what happened to me. So basically I couldn't run Microsoft Flight Simulator for longer than 1, maximum 2 hours anymore, and therefore any live stream was basically doomed to crash to desktop. Now, the issue, strangely enough, was only persistent with Microsoft Flight Simulator, so I thought, okay, well, maybe a reinstallation of the sim, later on maybe a reinstallation of the operating system might solve it, but none of those actually solved it. So ultimately, I decided to opt for the reseller's support and have the CPU fixed, and they told me, yeah, it's gonna take 3 months. And I'm like, no way I'm sitting here 3 months without a computer. So ultimately, since a friend of mine recently changed from Intel to AMD, I decided I'm going to give it a try as well, since he was really happy with his new Ryzen 7 CPU. So I decided to do the plunge as well, and after DHL took rather long to actually deliver all the parts, including 2 attempts to actually ship the CPU to me without it getting lost in shipping, thank you very much DHL, I'm still waiting for my money, I eventually got myself the AMD Ryzen 9800X 3D, which was recommended by a lot of you guys underneath my videos as well. So let's talk about what type of hardware I had previously and exchanged now. Previously I used to have the Intel i9-14900K together with the Asus ProArt Z790 Creator motherboard. Now, obviously, since I changed from Intel to AMD, I also had to change the board so that it is compatible with the new CPU. So I got myself the Asus STRIX Z670E board, together with the AMD Ryzen 7 9800X 3D. The rest of my hardware at this point is still unchanged, with the RTX 4090, 64 gigs of RAM and a 3TB M2 SSD, but when I installed the new hardware, I unfortunately had a rather unpleasant experience at first. So after I at first installed everything, did a fresh Windows reinstall after formatting the drive, downloaded all the drivers, installed everything, brought everything up to date, FS 2024 downloaded really quickly, that's something I really like about the new sim compared to the old one, more on that later. Started the flight, and the sounds were crackling, and it was a very unpleasant experience. Now, that is something that kind of freaked me out. I was like, not again a faulty system. So, thanks to a very good friend of mine who did some excellent help, and also some of the help that you guys have provided when I did my community post yesterday, I was luckily able to sort the issue out. Now, what solved the crackling sound problem on my side then? Well, 2 things. Number 1, disabling the NVIDIA HD audio driver in favor of the Realtek audio driver. And number 2, reinstalling that Realtek audio driver. It's a combination of the 2. Each 2 separately didn't do anything, but the combination of the 2 actually did it and solved the sound problems on now the 3rd consecutive flight in a row, so I'm kinda happy that the issue is actually solved. So now let's talk about the difference in system performance. So I basically went from one flagship product to the other, with the exception that AMD did recently release a couple new CPUs which are basically unavailable at the time being, since they are not in stock anywhere and much too expensive and not really that well suited for the purpose that I want to use them for. So basically I'm running a setup on a 60 Hz monitor. That means anything more than 60 FPS is not gonna do any good. Now, for this reason my frames were limited at 60 before and are limited at 60 now, which I can only recommend anyone not to let their system calculate everything to the highest frame possible that your monitor can't show in the end. So what happened? Well, I of course don't see any difference in the frames. The simulator is running maxed out with both CPUs, but something that I do notice with the AMD is that it runs a lot smoother. When I'm looking around, except for the occasional 2024 stutter, which I'm sure is a simulator issue, except for that, the thing is just running perfectly smooth when looking around, and that is something new. So the Intel always had a couple of stutters when looking around, the AMD doesn't. Now, am I totally happy with the new system then? Would I recommend anyone to go for that CPU? Well, recommend anyone to go to that CPU? Yeah, most certainly. It's running very well, and most importantly, it's running a lot cooler than the previous Intel did. So my i9 always ran at about 90 degrees, which unfortunately is rather normal for that CPU. On the other end side, the 9800X 3D runs at about 60 to 65 degrees. Well, you could say that's a bad thing though, because all of a sudden I need to pay to heat my room again, and my computer isn't doing it any longer. On the positive side, the AMD is using quite a bit less power, and of course running quite a bit cooler, so we are saving that money on the other end side again. Now, would I recommend anyone to go for the 9800X 3D then? Yeah, most definitely. It's really running the simulator great, and as mentioned, getting less stutters is actually something that I very much appreciate. Now, let's quickly talk about my earlier mention, why I'm so much happier with 2024 over 2020 then. So 2024 took maybe 15 minutes to download and then ran out of the box, and it took me 2 entire nights to download 2020 again. Now, when I did the direct comparison between the performance in Flight Simulator 2024 to the performance in Flight Simulator 2020 with the new setup, then 2024 runs at about 20 to 25% greater frame rate if I go unlimited. So unlimited Phoenix A320 at just Sim Düsseldorf with ultra settings except for disabled AI traffic gives me around 110 frames in Flight Simulator 2020, while it gives me around 140 frames to 150 in Flight Simulator 2024. Now obviously don't need that many frames, so I'm limiting them down, and then all it does is to reduce the temperatures and the power consumption a little bit. But I really think it is worth mentioning that difference in how much better the new simulator gets handled by this hardware. Now, am I done with all my hardware changes then? Well, not just yet. See, at the moment, the prices of the 5090, of the RTX 5090, are somewhere in the region around 2,500. And you can actually resell your 4090 for about 1,500 to 2,000 bucks at the moment. So I'm kinda hoping that I'll be able to grab one of those 5090s while the resale prices for the 4090s are still up, so that I effectively only pay something like 500 bucks for it. And that's something that I'm still thinking about, but that's really just making the system future-proof. Because right now, with the current setup 2024 with a Ryzen 7 9800X 3D and an RTX 4090. As mentioned, if I don't limit my frames, I get somewhere around 140, 150 frames, so that thing is definitely future-proof for the next, you name it, 4 to 5 years. And that's ultimately what I wanted to achieve when I first started upgrading my computer a year ago. Then unfortunately went through all the system instabilities, but hey, here we are! And now everything seems to be running just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this little peek into how computer performance looks like from, let's call, active flight sim's point of view, and not from the, let's say, hardware geek point of view, which is what most videos online seem to be about, where, to be honest, I'm not a hardware expert, so where I don't understand all that much. But this is what it looks like from an active flight sim's perspective. So do let me know what you think about this one. in the comments down below. I'm really looking forward to it. In the meantime, as always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing on the channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below, as that is basically what makes it possible to run the channel the way I can do it, and what ultimately pays for the hardware upgrades as well. So thank you very much everyone, and I'm really looking forward to see you live again soon with the new system. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.